Growing up in working-class Britain during the 1960s meant living in tight-knit streets where everyone knew your name. Life was simple, yet full of unspoken rules, shaped by hard work, modest means, and shared traditions. The air often smelled of coal smoke, and the clatter of factory shifts set the daily rhythm. Schoolyards echoed with laughter, but discipline was firm, and respect was expected without question. Everyday moments, family meals, seaside holidays, street games, formed the backbone of childhood, leaving memories that still carry warmth despite the hardships. For a working-class child in the 1960s, the terraced street was the centre of everything. Front doors opened straight onto the pavement, and every neighbour knew not just your name, but your family's story. Mornings began with the clink of milk bottles, the smell of toast, and greetings exchanged over the rattle of delivery carts. Privacy was rare, yet the closeness felt safe, like living in one long row of open houses. Children played from one end of the street to the other, skipping over worn paving stones, chalking hopscotch squares, or chasing balls made from rags. Dozens of watchful eyes kept order, with mothers leaning from open windows to call for tea, or warn about passing cars. But the street wasn't only for games. Many children earned a few coins there, running errands, helping with deliveries, or carrying bags for elderly neighbours. Life was modest, with coal smoke drifting from chimneys and the distant thud of factory machines marking the hours. Pavements bore the marks of both work and play, from scuffed football boots to the creak of hand carts. The corner shop served as a meeting point for penny sweets, newspapers, and local news. The street was playground, marketplace, and workplace all at once, shared between children and adults in an unspoken rhythm. When celebrations came, weddings, fairs, or parades, the whole road transformed. Bunting swayed between houses. Tables were set outdoors, and music floated into the night. Community spirit was lived daily, built from years of working, playing, and growing up side by side. School was a place of discipline and formality. Desks were neatly arranged, and teachers commanded respect without needing to raise their voices, as rules were understood by all. Lessons were focused, with reading, writing, and arithmetic at the core. The day began with assembly, where hymns were sung and announcements made. Uniforms were worn with care, shirts tucked in, shoes polished, and appearance was seen as a reflection of character. Late arrivals or untidy clothes drew stern looks. Corporal punishment was still permitted, though not always used. The threat alone kept most children in line. Respect for authority was woven into every lesson, making defiance rare and short-lived. Playtimes brought relief from the structure. Hopscotch, skipping, and marbles filled the schoolyard, and friendships formed quickly. The school gates marked the border between strict order and childhood freedom, a line crossed twice each day. Clothing was often passed down from older siblings or cousins, altered to fit growing bodies. Hand-me-downs carried the history of the family, each stitch telling a story. New clothes were a rare treat, often saved for birthdays or Christmas. Mothers and grandmothers kept sewing machines busy, patching knees, replacing buttons and letting out hems. Clothing repairs were an act of care, ensuring garments lasted as long as possible. Waste was avoided at all costs. Wool jumpers were unravelled and re-knitted. Coats were relined and dresses refreshed with new collars or trims. Creativity replaced consumerism, making each piece unique even when resources were scarce. Though styles were modest, pride was taken in looking neat. Children learned early how to keep their clothes clean and shoes polished. Presentation mattered as much as durability, reflecting both discipline and dignity. Evening meals were the anchor of the day. Families gathered around the table, sharing food and conversation without the distraction of screens or phones. It was a time to catch up, laugh, and settle disputes. Dishes were simple but hearty: meat and potatoes, pies and stews. Ingredients were stretched to feed everyone, with leftovers reinvented for the next day. Nothing was wasted, and every meal had purpose, rooted in thrift and tradition. Children learned table manners early, from passing dishes politely to thanking the cook. Eating together was as much about respect as nourishment. Meals were rituals that reinforced family bonds, a daily reaffirmation of togetherness. On Sundays, the table was set with extra care. Roast dinners brought relatives together, filling the room with warmth and the smell of gravy. These gatherings created memories that lasted far beyond the meal itself, becoming part of the family's shared history. The local cinema was a weekly highlight. Crowds queued outside, coins clutched in small hands, ready for an afternoon escape. The big screen brought colour and wonder to lives often framed by grey streets and routine. Inside, the air was warm with the scent of popcorn and sweets. Seats were worn but familiar, and the flicker of the projector signalled the start of another world. Newsreels and cartoons set the stage, followed by the main feature that drew everyone in. Children sat wide-eyed, their imaginations fueled by adventure films, musicals or comedies. Laughter and gasps rippled through the audience, shared by strangers who felt like friends for a couple of hours. The cinema became a communal dream, where real life was momentarily suspended. Walking home in the evening chill, the magic lingered. Conversations replayed favourite scenes, and the glow of the experience lasted well into the week. It was more than entertainment, it was a doorway to possibility, one that shaped youthful imaginations. The streets rang with the shouts and laughter of children from morning until dusk. Chalk hopscotch patterns brightened the pavements, and the clatter of marbles hitting stone echoed through the warm air. Narrow lanes and alleys became impromptu football pitches, with jumpers marking goalposts and an old ball serving for match after match. Skipping ropes slapped against the ground in rhythm, and hide-and-seek spilled across entire blocks. There were no mobile phones or organised schedules. Freedom meant exploring every corner of the neighbourhood. Safety came not from fences or locked gates, but from the constant watch of neighbours, leaning on doorframes and chatting over low walls. The unwritten rule was simple: be home by the time the street lamps blinked on, or face a telling off. Playthings were homemade or passed down. Worn tyres rolled for races, sticks became swords, and a ball stitched from rags could last a whole summer. Imagination filled the gaps where money could not, turning gutters into rivers for paper boats, and building worlds from whatever lay at hand. Friendships were forged in these games, bound by shared victories and squabbles quickly forgotten. Disagreements never lasted long, for tomorrow's adventures awaited. The streets belonged to the children until nightfall, and their echoing laughter was the soundtrack of a community. By their early teens, many working-class children had small jobs that fitted neatly around school. Newspaper rounds were done in the chill of early mornings, hands ink-stained from folding pages. Others ran errands for grocers, swept up in local shops, or helped at the weekend markets. Work taught discipline and the worth of each penny, lessons that stayed for life. The pay was small, sometimes just a few coins, but it carried enormous pride. The first earned money felt like independence, a reward for effort that could be spent on sweets, a cinema ticket, or saved towards something bigger. Hours were steady but unforgiving. A missed shift might mean losing the job, and reliability was valued more than speed. Deliveries were made in all weather, through rain and snow, without complaint. Punctuality and persistence earned trust, and word of a dependable young worker spread quickly through the community. These early jobs built more than savings. They instilled responsibility. Spending was thoughtful because each coin had been earned, and the habit of careful money management became second nature long before adulthood. Music was a shared lifeline in the 1960s. Radios perched on kitchen shelves played the latest hits, and the debut of a new chart song became a topic for playground debate. At home, families gathered to listen together, the warm crackle of the signal making even the news sound personal. For teenagers, records were treasures, sometimes shared among siblings, sometimes guarded fiercely. Owning a first single was a rite of passage, spun over and over until the grooves wore thin. Popular music shaped hairstyles, weekend outfits, and even friendships. Bands like the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, and the Kinks didn't just provide songs, they became symbols of a shifting world. Music offered escape from the repetition of daily life, a taste of something daring and new that stretched far beyond the terraced streets. Local dances, youth clubs, and church halls turned into stages for live bands, giving young people a place to gather. The rhythm of the era lived in the beat, and it connected listeners in ways no conversation could match. A seaside holiday was a family's greatest treat. Planning began weeks in advance, with clothes mended, savings tucked away, and sandwiches wrapped in grease-proof paper alongside flasks of strong tea. Trains and buses bustled with chatter, children pressing faces to the windows as the landscape shifted toward the coast. The smell of salt and vinegar chips greeted visitors before the sea itself came into view. Buckets and spades appeared instantly, and castles rose proudly on the sand, only to fall beneath the evening tide. Barefoot races to the water's edge left feet numb from the cold. Piers offered penny arcades, carousels, and candy floss that stuck to fingers. Even the smallest pleasures felt grand when shared, whether it was winning a cheap trinket or posing for a souvenir photo. The seaside was where everyday worries melted away. Journeys home were quieter, marked by sunburn, sandy shoes, and the weight of satisfied tiredness. The sea's memory stayed long after, a reminder of the few days each year when the world felt wide and carefree. Could one short holiday feel like pure magic? Winter in working-class Britain was harsh. Frost crept across the inside of bedroom windows, and the chill lingered in every corner until the fire roared to life. Outside, icy pavements made each step careful, and breath rose in clouds into the grey sky. Coal deliveries were a familiar sight, men tipping black heaps into backyards, leaving dust and the sharp scent of fuel. Lighting the fire was a daily ritual, coaxing flames to push back the cold. Evenings drew families together in the only warm room. Chairs were pulled close, knitting needles clicked, radios played softly, and hot water bottles were carried upstairs to icy beds. Bedrooms stayed unheated, and getting up in the morning meant bracing against the chill. Despite the hardship, winter had its own beauty. The glow of the hearth turned darkness into comfort, and the shared warmth was more than physical. It was the heart of family life. Growing up as a working-class child in 1960s, Britain meant living in a world both modest and rich in memories. Life was built on community, routine, and small joys, shaped by hard work and the shared strength of neighbours. Every day carried its own rhythm, from the warmth of a coal fire to the excitement of a Saturday cinema trip, and each left a mark that time cannot erase. Those streets, classrooms, and seaside holidays may be gone, but their spirit remains in the stories passed down. To keep these memories alive, subscribe and join us as we explore the past through the eyes of those who lived it.